Welcome to the Installing the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager lesson. The lesson objectives are shown in the slide. This is the Identifying System Requirements topic. This slide shows supported Windows operating systems for the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, or SEPM, and SEPM database servers. You can install the SEPM on the virtual products shown in the slide. The virtual products shown here are known to run with the embedded database. Consult with your virtual product or database vendor for supported databases. If your SEPM becomes input-output intensive or shows random spikes of heavy resource usage in dealing with clients, refer to your vendor's documentation on how to resolve these issues. As a guideline for VMware products, you can access the knowledge base article at the links shown. This slide shows supported hardware configurations for the SEPM server and includes all components installed on a single computer. Refer to the latest Symantec Endpoint Protection release notes for the latest hardware requirements. This slide shows only base requirements. Consider memory and disk space requirements for future growth as usage and data storage increase. Sizing and scalability requirements are covered in the Architecting and Sizing the SEP Implementation lesson. The SEPM installation additionally requires specific application configurations as shown on the slide. For VMware support and additional configuration options, see the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager 14 Installation and Administration Guide. Refer to Planning for the installation and see System Requirements. The Java console comes installed with the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager software, but requires that the Java 2 runtime environment is installed. If the computer does not have this installed, you are prompted to download and install the JRE. The web console can be run on the local system where the SEPM software is installed, or remotely on other systems. The look and feel of this console is identical to the Java console. Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge are only supported for the web console access. They are not supported for use with browser intrusion prevention on SEP clients. This is the Preparing Servers topic. The steps to prepare servers before installing the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager are shown in the slide. To enable communications, perform one of the following tasks. Open ports to allow communication between the different computers acting as servers and clients and the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager as outlined in the slide. Permit smc.exe on all computers to send and receive traffic through your firewalls. Most firewalls use stateful inspection when filtering TCP traffic, so incoming TCP responses are allowed automatically and returned to the original requester. In most instances, the ephemeral port range is the source port specification and well-known ports are the destination ports. You do not have to open the ephemeral TCP ports when you configure your firewall software. For a complete list of port communications, see the Symantec Endpoint Protection 14 Installation and Administration Guide. Refer to Installing the Symantec Endpoint Protection Client and see Preparing for Client Installation, about communication ports that Symantec Endpoint Protection uses. Depending on your environment and which options you select, you may need to open additional ports as outlined in the slide. External database communication, for communication from a SEPM to a SQL server. Remote console, 8443. HTTPS communication between a remote management console and the SEPM. All login information and administrative communication takes place using this secure port. Remote console 9090. Initial HTTP communication between a remote management console and the SEPM to display the login screen only. Remote management, required for communicating with a remote management console. Remote logging and reporting, for database replication between SEPM servers. Process Launcher was added in SEP version 12.1.5. Only at local host requests, this service's virtual account launches processes that require higher privileges so that other SEPM services do not require them. The launcher is used for launching Live Update. In addition to preparing your hardware and operating system, you need to know the following. The SEPM uses Apache to install web services. The number of clients supported by the SEPM. Your database settings for embedded or MS SQL, and deploying clients. The SEPM requires the use of a website. SEP 14 installs an Apache web server that listens by default on port 443. You can change the port if necessary. Symantec recommends against using port 80 to avoid conflict when the server is shared by another application using that port, such as Internet Information Services. You use the SEP14 Management Server Configuration Wizard to select the default or custom configuration type. The default installation is very straightforward and enables small business users and others to enter a minimal amount of information to configure the installation. The default configuration type automatically installs an embedded Sybase SQL Anywhere database. This installation type configures the SEPM and database to support smaller customer environments, generally 500 clients or less. If your SEPM manages more than 500 clients, use a Microsoft SQL database, or if you plan to install multiple management servers, you can choose the custom configuration. The custom configuration type enables you to specify all the values necessary to produce a custom installation. When you select the custom mode, you can choose a new or existing Microsoft SQL Server database, vital for environments with over 5,000 clients, or install an embedded database. You may choose a Microsoft SQL Server database that is installed on the same host as your SEPM or on a remote Microsoft SQL Server. The following pages outline the installation and database settings in more detail. This slide shows the default settings and values. The database password is initially set to the same password as the SEPM administrator. However, if the admin password is changed, the database password is not changed. In SEP14, you can rerun the Management Server Configuration Wizard to change the embedded database password. When you install the SEPM with a Microsoft SQL Server database, there are specific configuration requirements for SQL Server. You can install the SEPM with a local or remote database. Specific configuration requirements include the following. Do not use a shared instance with another application. Do not use the default Microsoft SQL instance name. Use something easily identifiable such as SEPM. Set the Microsoft SQL System Administrator SA password when you are using mixed mode authentication. The enabled protocol is TCP/IP. For SQL Server 2008, 2012, 2014, and 2016, set the following. For IP addresses for TCP/IP, enabled IP1 and IP2. For TCP/IP port numbers, for IP1, IP2, and IP-all, set TCP dynamic ports to blank and specify a TCP port number. The default is 1433. You specify this port number when you create the database. Start the SQL Server browser service. If your database is located on a remote server, you must also install the SQL Server native client components on the computer on which the SEPM is installed. Database Server Authentication Parameters. Authentication type can be SQL Server Authentication or Windows Authentication. Database Server is the name of the Microsoft SQL Server and the optional instance name. SQL Server port is the port that is configured on the SQL Server to send and receive traffic. This port number can be changed. Server username and server password for the SQL administrator. SQL Server client folder location will vary based upon the version of SQL used. New database creation or existing database parameters. Database name field is populated by default. The name can be changed. Database data folder is the location of the SQL Server data directory. If all entries are correct, after you click Default, the directory is automatically detected. The locations will vary based upon the version of SQL used. Database username and database password is the name and password of the database's user account that has a standard role with read and write access. For further details, see the Symantec Endpoint Protection 14 Installation and Administration Guide about SQL Server Configuration Settings. Using the Client Deployment Wizard, you can choose to deploy software and install clients. Immediately following the completion of the Management Server Configuration Wizard, or when you initially run the SEPM. The steps to create packages and deploy software are covered in detail in the Implementing the Best Method to Deploy Windows Clients lesson. This is the Installing and Configuring the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager topic. For a first-time installation, install, configure, and test Symantec Endpoint Protection in a test environment. The installation and configuration procedures describe how to install and configure the SEPM server and client software on computers in a sample environment. The Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager software installation is divided into phases. installing Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, configuring the site and the SEPM database, and as an option, you can immediately run the Client Deployment Wizard to create client deployment software packages or deploy client software packages. After you run setup.exe from the distribution media, you are presented with the Installation Wizard screen. To continue with the SEPM installation, click the Next button. As you continue through the Installation Wizard, you accept the license agreement and then accept the default destination folder or select a folder of your choice. The installer then begins by moving and installing files onto your SEPM host and writing the necessary information into the system registry. This is the final step for installing the SEPM. Next, you configure the SEPM. After the SEPM software is installed, the Management Server Configuration Wizard guides you through the steps to configure the SEPM. For first-time installations, the next phase configures the site, management server, database, administrator password, and email address. Selecting the default configuration is automatic and installs the embedded database for up to 500 clients. The recovery file contains the information necessary to restore your SEPM in the event of a disaster. Backing up and recovering from this file is discussed in the Benefiting from a SEPM Disaster Recovery Plan lesson. Assign a password to the default admin account. Although you must use admin in the username field in this screen, you can change the system administrator username to something else after you log on to the console. You can also change the password or the email account for this user at any time. SEP administrator accounts are managed on the admin page of the SEPM console. Next, type the SMTP server name, port number, and minimum privilege email credential that the SEPM uses to send notifications and reports. No email will ever be received by SEPM, but most SMTP servers, such as Exchange, require authentication to send email messages, so it's important to ask your company's email administrator ahead of time for a very basic credential that your SEPM can use. To ensure the SEPM has the latest definitions to download to clients, run Live Update during the installation. You can also submit anonymous system information, telemetry data, and information about how you use this product to Symantec. This enables Symantec to analyze and improve the functionality of its endpoint security solutions. The default is yes. Clear the checkbox if you do not want to participate in data collection. Clicking the Next button begins database creation and initialization. If you choose to run Live Update during installation, Live Update runs. Live Update can take 30 minutes or more to complete. When the SEPM installation completes, start the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. Note that when you initially start the SEPM, if you do not have Java Runtime 2 installed, you are prompted by the Management Server Configuration Wizard to install the Java Runtime 2 from the installation media. When you select the custom configuration, you perform the steps shown in the slide to install the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. When you perform a custom configuration, perform the following. Select the custom configuration for a new installation option for more than 500 clients or using custom settings. This parameter affects the initial value of settings, such as the server and client communication mode and heartbeat intervals, and allows for additional configuration options when using an MS SQL database or multiple management servers. Then, select Install My First Site. A site comprises at least one SEPM and a single database. This setting is selected when installing the first site. Installing and managing additional management servers and sites is covered in the Managing Replication and Failover lesson. Next, select the database type. For the embedded database, you enable optional database maintenance tasks. Truncates the transaction log. The transaction log records almost every change that takes place within the database. The management server removes unused data from the transaction log. Rebuilds the index. The management server defragments the database table indexes to improve the time it takes to sort and search the database. For MS SQL databases, if you are running database tasks using Microsoft software, do not run the SEPM database maintenance tasks. Database maintenance is covered in the Benefiting from a SEPM Disaster Recovery Plan lesson. Similar to the default configuration, you need to perform the steps in the slide to complete the installation. Create an administrator account and specify the email server. Create an encryption password. For the default configuration, the encryption password is created automatically and must be recorded. In a custom configuration, the encryption password is specified by the administrator. Add optional partner information as required. Specify whether data collection should be enabled. When the management server configuration completes, log on to Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager and verify that the home page is properly displayed, and familiarize yourself with the console interface and documentation. It is important to ensure that the encryption password is securely recorded. Depending on the operating system, the SEPM installation log file is located in the location shown in the slide. The installation log file name is sepm_inst.log. The log file is written by the Microsoft installer. In the event the installation fails and a rollback does not occur, data is written to the sepm_inst.log. If a rollback occurs, a rollback.log is created. On Windows computers, to display the sepm_inst log file, from Windows Start menu, select Run. In the displayed dialog box, type %temp%. For installation failures, you can search the sepm_inst.log for value 3. A sample log file is shown in the slide. The action that occurred before the line that contains the value 3 entry is most likely the action that caused the failure. The lines that appear after this entry are the installation components that have been rolled back because the installation was unsuccessful. A value 3 error is the Microsoft installer fatal during installation error. The environment variable %temp% is the Windows/temp folder. When you follow the recommended best practices, the next step is to protect the SEPM server. You do this by creating and installing a client package on the server. Installing the Symantec Endpoint Protection Management software does not protect from security threats. The Symantec Endpoint Protection client package must be separately installed to provide this protection. After your server is protected, then you can create packages and deploy those packages to your clients. This is the Validating the Installation topic. You perform all management functions through a SEPM console. The SEPM console can run as a Java-enabled console or use a regular web browser. Both types of console can be run locally or remotely from the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. When accessing the SEPM from the Java console, the processing and memory allocation is performed on the system running the console, such as an administrator's desktop machine. In contrast, the web browser relies on the SEPM server hardware to do the majority of the console's work. SEPM memory is allocated per web console session, so Symantec recommends that you limit the number of simultaneous web console sessions, as it has the potential to degrade SEPM overall performance. Using the Java console for remote connections can reduce impact on the SEPM. If the default configuration is used at the time of installation, the SEPM communicates with the SEPM console using HTTPS on TCP 8443 for all management and administrative tasks. This is the port that is used when viewing the policies, clients, and admin pages of the console. TCP 8445 is the port that is used for the home, monitors, and reports pages of the console. TCP 8445 is also used when running the separate reporting console, which can be accessed using https:// your SEPM IP address or server name, :8445/reporting. After you install Symantec Endpoint Protection, you can log on to the Endpoint Protection Manager console in these ways. The Java console. Log onto the console locally by using the computer on which the management server is installed. On the Windows Start menu, click Programs, Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. To use the Java console remotely, open a web browser and type http://hostname or IP address :9090. Use the link to download Java if necessary and install it. Then click the link for Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager console. Using the web console, log on locally or remotely by using a web browser. Inside the web browser, type the hostname or IP address :9090. ActiveX and scripting must be installed on the system running the browser. Use the link to download the certificate if necessary and install it. Then click the link for Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager web console. For more information on performing remote logons, refer to Symantec Endpoint Protection 14 Installation and Administration Guide. see Installing Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager, and refer to Logging on to Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager console. This screen shows you how to log on to the SEPM console locally in Windows 2012 R2. All SEPM shortcuts may not be displayed on the default Start menu. Use All Applications or the search engine to locate the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. To log on to the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager console, type the admin password. This is the password that you created during the SEPM installation. Next, click Log On. The console is displayed. When you log on to the SEPM console for the first time, the Getting Started page is displayed. From here, you can run a live update to update content, check license status and activate the product, learn more about Symantec Endpoint Protection by viewing a product tour, run the Client Deployment Wizard to install protection on clients, or learn about the latest feature release. As required tasks are completed, a green check mark appears to indicate that it is complete. The Getting Started page reappears until all the required tasks are completed. Then a Do Not Show This Page Again checkbox appears at the bottom of the screen. You can redisplay the Getting Started page in the Help menu. All the functions provided in the Getting Started page are also available in other parts of the SEPM console. The Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager console provides an in-depth view of your network security. It provides a central location from which to manage Symantec Endpoint Protection. When you log onto the console, you see the SEPM console home page, a navigation bar that contains page tabs. The navigation bar runs down the left side of the pane and contains links to 6 pages. Each page represents a major management functional category with an icon and descriptive text. You can click on an icon in the navigation bar to display its corresponding page. The icons are always available to help you navigate from page to page. Each page consists of either panes of information, as seen on the home page, or tabs for different sets of information. You also see a menu in the upper right corner that enables you to refresh the screen, access help and find out about important information such as the Symantec Endpoint Protection software version that you are running, or log off from the SEPM console. The console is separated into 6 pages that enables the grouping of common features in a logical and usable manner. For example, all policies can be managed by accessing the Policies page, and you can manage clients by accessing the Clients page. This slide summarizes this lesson. For more information about the topics discussed in this lesson, refer to the resources listed on the slide, and remember to frequently check the Symantec Support website.